All right, there we go. Hi, everyone. It's Sarithkin from Montier, and I'm here tonight with His Grace Brannos from the Middle. Thank you, Your Grace, for agreeing to participate in my interview series.
No, I absolutely loved, even before your interview series, I absolutely loved your quest for yourself. So I was happy to see that you did this. And I think, me and Sean talk about this all the time. I think episodes like, the things that you guys have been doing and SCA Coaches Corner, Great Fighters YouTube, the practices, all of these things have really opened the eyes of what we could do, right? And I know personally, even for us, I'm learning more right now at our fight practices because of the way we have to do them than I think I probably would have, even if we didn't have COVID, right? So
yeah, I love that you guys are using targeting pads and buffers, because we've been doing that for years, because it's just such an easier way to practice with one another without having to spend all the time getting in and out of armor. And I have a thing about helmet hair, so I have to take a shower after I fight because I don't like to stink. But anyway, we don't need to talk about all that. But so I usually start these with your origin story. So if you can tell me how you found the SCA and when and where, that would be great.
So there was a gentleman called Justinian back, not too many years ago, maybe 30, a little over 30. So that I was going to school with, college with, and I had a class with him, and he's like, "Hey, you would love to do this." Of course, we're all D&D nuts, and I was doing martial arts at the time, and he's like, "Oh, you need to come out." And then I kind of blew him off for a year. I happened to be working somewhere, and he popped in. He's like, "Did you ever do that?" And I'm like, "No." So the only place we could get the information, this is pre-email, all of that, was at a D&D store that happened to be downtown in Detroit, which wasn't a very good area at the time. That's when Detroit was really suffering. And so, me and a friend made a drive down there. Actually, his Earl Turquin, he was a best friend of mine, still is. And we got the number, and the number was, the meetings were downtown at Mistress Amaze and Sir Garahan's house. And so I grabbed my wife up and Tarquin, and I was like, "Okay, let's go do this." And my poor wife just along for the ride, because she's not a D&D person, not a medieval person, all of that kind of stuff. And we just started going down there, and they were wonderful. They really good about getting new people in and helpful. But again, it was not in a great part of the neighborhood downtown. So we would drive down Van Dyke, in downtown Detroit, to this like once a week. And we bring 6-pack with us, drink our beer, go. And that was the only way to get information at the time. So they put the board up with all the event kind of flyers, and that's what we did. And so right shortly after that, some local people came in, younger people, because the group had been here was run, May and Caroline used to be here right at the beginning of the mid-round. So, they've been old group, lots of old friends in that group and so on. But there was a young group that Gary had helped out a ton, everybody had helped them a ton, that did most of the fighting. So they saw that that's what I really wanted to do. And they're the ones that really got me into it, Baron Dermont and Roderick. And at the time it was Forgan, later he became Sir Forgan, and then I wired to him. That was a whole different story. Maybe we'll cover that later, but that was the beginning, and that first armor is like, okay, here's your round shield, stick your arm through there and, grab the strapped round shield days. Oh, and I'm going to change the name on here because this is my.
I can do that for you.
Okay, you do it. We did kind of the old school, okay, you're going to do sword and shield on a Appel for a while. But, over time, lots of really great people, really large household here that we're part of. A great group, became a barony about 10 years later or so. But we're lucky. We have wonderful people. The other local groups around here are great. And I was lucky to land in a group with so many good people.
So you said before you found the SCA, you were doing other martial arts. What kind of other martial arts were you doing?
So I did some, my primary art was Tang Sudo, Wudakwan. So I was a black belt there. And then I did Hapkido, which is the one I really loved. Did a little bit of Kung Fu, did about a year plus of Kendo. And it was right through that Kendo time that I found the SCA. I was like, oh, now I can use this. I'm going to tear people up. Yeah. Here's a shield. I'm like, what do you do with that thing? So yeah, you learn quite fast.
So were you guys fighting down in downtown Detroit at the comic book store, the D&D thing?
No, we actually we fought in a couple different places, but mostly downtown parks. Okay. So we had a park on Sunday where the group here does a lot of melee. From that period, it was very much all melee. And at the time when I came in, there was one fight practice a week. So it was in a park. What was nice about the park that we had was it had an archery practice area in it too, which was good. But the only problem was you really had to sweep the area to make sure all the syringe needles were gone and the broken glass and all that other crap every time you went.
Yeah, Detroit has gotten better, right?
I tell you, so I've been practicing. So I started a Tuesday night practice about a year later, and it's at a church. The church was given to, it's a Catholic church. It was given to the Capuchins. They were promised the church in Detroit when they were shutting them all down. So the Father Dave was the pastor of the church there. He got that, and the Catholic church was very nice because it was all about, they didn't give money back to the archdiocese. It all went into the local neighborhood. Oh. So I mean, our first time there, they just had this big garage sale, hot dogs, introduction to the neighborhood. We were out there fighting and having the kids try stuff on, and we've been fighting there for 30 plus years. We've demoed the basement floor. So Tuesdays, in the winter, we're there all the time, and we've had lots of coronations there. The church is incredibly beautiful. We did about 7 years of fundraisers for them, like dinner theater shows with the help of Cinnabar, another barony around us. They, Van Hardware, lots of great art people there and people that knew how to do theater. So, but they redid the whole upstairs, which was probably about 150 grand, and it is actually one of the only Catholic churches in Detroit that makes money.
Wow.
So, and then of course they run a bakery for convicts. They'll bake and do all that. They've been running for 30 years. They've been doing gardening and empty lots in Detroit. And what happens is younger people with money, the older people with money would give a little bit of money to buy seed and stuff they need. The younger people would plant, and then everybody would share the harvest.
Well, what a great partnership.
It was sad, although he lasted a lot longer there than I even thought. When Father Dave left, because usually they rotate them pretty fast. They don't like leaving them around the congregations that long. But he was there for like 20 years. And Brother Ray, I work with Brother Ray now, and it's been an incredible partnership through the whole thing. We do watch sales down there and all kinds of other stuff. And now the neighborhood is just beautiful. There's an old school right next to it. They just revamped into condos. The street is, lots of houses in the street are starting to get redone finally. For a long time, we drive through Detroit, for the first 20 years, 25 years, we were driving through Detroit and you'd be like, hey, another house gone. Hey, another house gone. And empty blocks, from fully, developed to empty blocks over that 20 years. And it was really a shame. But now I go downtown, I don't even recognize it. It's just amazing to see the change. Bicycles everywhere, and it's a really, in fact, the church itself is also a very large mixed community of members there, they do a really, really good job with that. But Detroit in general has. A couple of years ago, I went down to, you never thought about it, but they started doing Christmas tree things down there for Christmas. So I went down ice skating and outdoor like bar venues and stuff, and you could literally walk into the buildings again and hang out in the lobbies and do all this other stuff. It's amazing to see how Detroit.
So you're selling Detroit, like everybody's going to want to move there and
Well, I would still be careful where you go. There's still a little bit of a donut around Detroit itself.
So tell me about your first couple times fighting. Were you a sword and shield fighter from the beginning?
Yeah, pretty much. That's how everybody was raised. It was like, here's your shield, you go. And back in those days, the shield was about 26 inches because that was our crown standard. So I fought with a kite, which was just really a rectangle with the bottoms pointed, and it's just straight lines, right? And I fought with that for a lot of years, and I had an incredible amount of energy, and I could lay that all down on somebody for about 2 to 3 minutes, you know, and I'd get some great kills, but I would lose to the people I shouldn't lose to. And I did that for about 2.5 years. It was very frustrating at the time because I was pretty competitive. I'm a little competitive now, competitive still, but at one point I actually was like, okay, I'm just going to be one of those melee guys. The tournament thing it's just not working for me. And it took a night down at the church where I was opening it up, and sometimes people show up, sometimes they wouldn't. But it took a night where His Grace Dodd, who was a knight at the time, just a knight at the time, he might have been an count. And then 2 other knights from out of area showed up as well, and then a couple of squires. None of them were our group. And I was like, okay, it's the Saturday or Sunday before Christmas Eve. I'm just gonna watch. It's just a couple people, and I was watching, and I'm like, what are they doing? It's like everybody's going in slow motion. Why don't they just lay it down, And about halfway through that practice, like, son of a pup, they're actually trying to hit openings. and it changed everything. And I was like, you know what? Next practice, I'm going to go to the next practice, and I am not going to throw a blow going forward. And my endurance went from 5-minute fights with huge breaks to all night. Nobody touched me, and I was like, light bulb,
So it really was that fast for you to have that light bulb moment?
Literally that fast. That change ended up being that fast.
It's interesting to hear you talk about, being one of those fighters that just keeps throwing, because that's so not what you are anymore. So you were able to just change overnight?
For most part, yeah. And in fact, I had to change again to learn to go forward and throw blows. So for me, and I'm lucky at with Ron Valder here and lots of other great knights in our group here. We constantly change. Everything from the use of, I went in, a number of years ago, I started doing a lot more movement, really hard, bursty movements, a lot of, adding a lot of feet and constant movement to stuff. And then I took that constant movement, and I had to, and there's work through that. I found that for sometimes I was just using movement for movement's sake and wasn't applying it against my opponent. So I had to make some changes, right? And then I took that and I layered in tension and I'd watch for people to breathe. So as soon as they started breathing, I'd jump on them and bring their tension up so their lungs would collapse a little bit, and they just suck bad air back into them to break the oxygen down in their system, right? And so now I use that kind of, that was kind of rolled right into the Eastern European style of boxing, which is this constant tension where it's not the Mexican style tension where you're just getting beat up as you're driving straight at the person. It's, you push and you push corners, you're applying tension, and then as soon as they're ready to go, you just fall out to the edge. And then as soon as they want to relax, you push back in so that you're controlling the time of tension. And since I'm controlling it, I know where my breathing is. And through that time, you found that actually walking forward while you're pushing on somebody is easier to breathe walking forward than actually walking backwards. Everyone wants to I need to breathe, I need to back up. That's when I'm like, oh, good, I can breathe and go forward. Right? Because yeah. I'm going to be on your edge and make you feel uncomfortable. And as long as I can hold that tension and hold tension in your body, There was a great Black Belt article on, tension across your chest will reduce the amount of oxygen in your system almost 20%.
Wow.
So as long as you can keep that, then you're in control. And so that was that next layer. And now, and then the one thing I would say, Rongalder is probably, far better fighter than I am. And there are
You always say that, I don't know.
There are a lot of great fighters out there. One thing for me, I'm always, the thing, and this goes to practice, it goes right to fighting, is consistency, right? It's just I want to be constant and I want to push the edge. And the one thing that probably I feel like I do better than a lot of people, and that is innovate. I can see what needs to be done next. And I'm like, okay, now we're going to push it to a different layer.
So I have two follow-up questions on that, because I think one, it will be an easy question. It's you said something about waiting for someone to breathe, and that's when you would sort of go. What do you look for to see them breathe? Is it like a shoulder movement? Is it a body? What do you look for?
So it's interesting because this is another layer that I started talking about with some other counselors, actually. So, here's a great question. You have a job where you have to read people, right?
Right.
What do you look for? So you're almost like a counselor, right? You can read how they feel, if they're tense, if they're relaxed, right? If they're searching for something. They're not saying anything. They're not telling you that. You're reading that, right?
Right.
So there's a level of emotional awareness that some people are really good at. And that's that piece that great fighters know how to use. Does that make sense?
Right. And you're right. And it's a million little things that all add up to knowing.
Right. And we don't talk about that a lot, right? I actually started, because I started thinking about that, I actually asked Rongalder, I'm like, for me, empathy is really hard for me because there's like 3 layers of empathy. I fall in the center layer where it's, when we had really bad times here in Detroit. In fact, I came out for one of your classes right around that time. And, we had so many 60,000 plus people living in empty buildings and people, it was really, really, and lots of friends without jobs and all of this. And emotionally that lays on me really hard. And so, we did everything from, trying to get people who had jobs to do side jobs with people that needed to do stuff. Everybody was pushing everybody to, if there was a job open somewhere, to try to make sure we knew first, all these kinds of things. But I look back at that, I'm like, that empathy, that understanding emotion, that same thing that, you see with counselors and people that have to do that, they know and can tap into other people, right?
Right.
So that same thing happens on the fighting field. We don't think about it that way, but it really is. So I actually did an exercise, and I love doing this exercise because people absolutely hate it. And I know Louis will probably ping me the guy's name because I just forget it right now. But he does this really nice exercise where it's trying to hit my hand, right? And it's just like as fast as you can, and you can't do it. And then he just goes, he's really slow, he just relaxes and breathes and touches it. And that 100% works. And then I watched his second video where he explained it and how it's an explosion forward. There's no top back, right? There's just explosion forward and then commitment after that explosion. And I'm like, but that wasn't the only thing he was doing. One thing was he'd throw it and he'd almost look off. You build a connection with people. And as soon as you break that connection, people are now, that connection's gone. They don't know what's going on. And I'll do an exercise. I'm like, watch this. Okay, I'm gonna make a connection with you and we're gonna walk forward and back and you're gonna follow, right? And then I'll walk forward and back and then I'll start walking forward and I'll stop and they'll hold for a second and I'll just do this. And I'll walk right up to them almost every time.
Interesting.
Because they lost that connection. So that it's that piece, and it's really kind of eerie how it works. So you can see people, it's like you throw that way, the way that connection is like, and then you walk right into something. They're looking for something. They lost that connection, so they're looking for something. And I think that's what makes up a lot of people don't think about it, but the ability to read and connect with people makes up that level of the game.
Yeah.
Of reading somebody.
That's I had never really thought about it that way because you're right. My job requires that, and I'm actually quite a bit of an empath. And I can read when people are going to go, and my husband always asks me why, and I'm like, well, I can just tell. I can tell. But that's what it is. It's like a million little things, and yeah. So the other question I was going to ask you is, a lot of people get stuck, and they're like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know what to change in my fight to take me to the next level. How do you decide that, and how do you help people decide that for themselves?
So there's probably a number of stories. I'll tell you the first piece is, don't give it up, right? Get back to the basics and just keep it. I don't care if I don't care if you're hurt, keep going to practice, watch. You'll learn tons from watching. At our practice, if you've got a bad knee, you sit in a chair and fight, right? And there's tons of different ways to continue. If you feel, everybody runs through those times where they're going to be kind of leveled off, and the trick is to get through those. You just have to stay consistent, and you will come out of those, right? What I see a lot of times is they're like, oh, I'm at this level, I can't go anymore. And then they're looking, they start looking everywhere. And they're not finding anything that's like bursting them out of this flat place, because it's not. There's a level of understanding that still has to be done. And in fact, you're probably making it longer because you're adding so much other different things in. Now, if you just add one other thing in, absolutely do that. But practice it, stay with it. Don't keep looking for, the key, the next key, don't keep looking for, it's like, okay, this is, if I drink this bottle of spirits, I'm going to be cured. That's not the way it is, right? You push through those pieces, and you can learn why you're still there. You may not execute, but you absolutely can learn.
Okay. Thanks. So let's go back to that sort of aha, like light bulb moment for you after you had that moment and you changed your fight, so that you were picking your moments and looking for openings and whatever. How long after that did it take you to reach night level?
So through all of that, my early part of the SCI changed over to mace and shield. So I was primarily me and at the time, Roac were the two big mace guys in Middle Kingdom. So I fought that for about 5 years. There was towards the last part of the 5th year, like probably 8-9 months, I had broke my hand again. And so I was fighting sword and shield because I could protect my hand more. And that's where I kind of started making that gradual change to sword and shield. Still competed in crowns, still did all of those things, still competed at a very high end. I guess the beef back in the day was, did I know any other weapon styles besides mace and shield? Even though I had been already fighting sword and shield and winning more than mace and shield. But so it took me 5 years to become a knight. After that aha moment, so probably about 3 years after that, maybe. And then after I was knighted, and that's a whole another story. It may not be a fun one, but right after I got knighted, it was about another year before I won the first president.
Okay, so you were fighting crown while you were an unbelt.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think Doug mentioned this last week, is like, if you were put on the list, and this is a good story because I changed the way that worked to some people. A lot of people were very happy I changed it. Some people weren't so much. In Middle Kingdom, you're invited to crown. So you would have a list of 100, probably about 100 unbelts. And then any knight, of course, could go. But if you were on that list, you pretty much were like, if I don't go, they're not going to invite me again. Or if I'm searching to be a knight, then I better go. You didn't have much of a choice. So you're on that list and Crown's 14 hours away. Well, you're driving 14 hours away.
Right.
You know, if you wanted it or not. So, you know, like my first Crown, I believe it was about 84 people that in that one. But in, you know, usually our Crowns were around that high 70s to high 80s through those period of times. After I won, the first thing I did was there's a number of things I wanted to do, and one was get rid of the list. Now, I didn't, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. I didn't necessarily get rid of the list. So the list is made up of people that said, you know, peers would write in, and the Crown would ask the peers to write in people they believe would be good monarchs. And if you got 2 people that wrote in for the same person, you'd put them on a list, right? So, and then you would publish that list. What I did was send us those. I'm not publishing the list. And unbelts, if you want to fight in it, send me and I'll check the list.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So the Crown immediately dropped to upper 40s of people that wanted, and there are tons of people that are like, thank you, I didn't want to drive another 14 hours to do something I really didn't want to do. But you know, the negative side of that was, where did we have to go show your prowess now? Now we had what we called the Pro Tour. So you know, Mid-Realm was huge at the time. It encompassed North Shield and Eldermere, right? So you would have to primarily, you'd go to every region at least. If you wanted to be on kind of knighted, you'd try to get to every region at least twice a year. And Pro Tour, you'd like every region had their major fighting events. So you kind of knew where you had to go. But of course, in the early period, you didn't have many knights fighting, because the Mid-Realm was, you got knighted, leave room for somebody else to get knighted next. So don't go fight tournaments. You're done. It wasn't a said thing, but it was kind of the way it worked. So if you see, I tell you, for a long time, you'd see knights marshaling and helping and do all that. Not many, but you would see some. But if you got 2 or 3 knights in a tournament, that was a big tournament.
Oh, that's interesting. How did that culture change?
Well, at the same time, I was like, I want a place where all the unbelts can go and talk to a knight and learn from a knight and challenge a knight. At the time, the order itself was pretty rough because we didn't have a very good bond together. There was a lot of fights because we poll and we have meetings and so on. So I did, and I think Felix talked about it a little bit, although there's going to be a little bit of adjustment on his story. I developed the TOC, which was the Tournament of Chivalry. And I asked knights, and I'm going to tell you, their first TOC had 20 knights in it. And there were knights that I had never seen in armor at that TOC. And we went out there, and lines were, I felt bad for the unbelts. Lines were very long. But we fought for 4 hours, and every one of us, after we were done and we went into the meeting, every one of us were brothers and sisters. Because you just went through a battle together.
Right.
Right? There is nothing more when you bond a group with this is what we're doing for them. But on the back end, I think the unbelts all the time, because what they did to the order is they made us better. We got to fight some of the greatest fighters coming up all the time. And that's still the way it is. That makes you a better fighter, right?
Yep.
And so, TOC, and it wasn't a one and done and I walk away. TOC was, it was something that you have to mentor it, and, change isn't, I can write anything in law, well, if they allow me to. It doesn't mean change is really done, right? Especially when it gets around events. You have to make sure that people enjoy it, that people love it. It's for them. And then you have to go to each king. It's like, hey, are we going to do one? Go to the order. Are we going to do one? And then soon, after a short period of time, it became a kingdom level event because everybody enjoyed it so much. And then I was lucky enough to see it travel across the society and to Penzic and to all of those things. Everybody runs them a little different, but that's fine. And we still do them to this day. So.
Very cool. You guys also out there do like a chivalry retreat? Was that something?
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come out anytime. So
I wasn't angling for an invitation. I wasn't
It is
angling for an invitation, but I just wondered what's the story behind that? And was it a bonding thing originally, and you guys just do it every
yeah.
year? Or?
Well, I mean, you hear this all the time. It's like you get a bunch of, the white holes standing around. They must be talking business because there's a bunch of knights standing together. Well, really, it was a bunch of knights that grew up together in the SCA, that were on belts together, that are standing together talking because they've been friends for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? And so we didn't get a lot of those times because everybody has their squires, everybody has their households, everybody has their groups, everybody's helping run an event and do all these things, right? So we don't get time together much. And at the time, we had a couple of people that, it wasn't, Duke Muckety Muck and everyone else. It was a couple of younger knights that were like, I think this would be a great idea. And we started doing it every year. Every year ended up a little too much, so we try to do it about every other year now. And it's just one of those days we all go to a hotel somewhere or people's houses locally or whatever, or even the site itself. Sometimes we're like, hey, there's crash space at the site. You bring a bunk, you stay there. And we hang out the night before, have fun. We go fight all day. That's it. Have pizza or whatever. Sometimes at the site or back at the hotel, and then we hang out and drink and have fun all night. And the first ones we had people like Count William and Moonwolf playing, and in the other room playing, singing and doing, and we had a big poker party thing going on, and just people hanging out all night. And it was one of those times where we could all be together, nobody's judging anyone. And we're not breaking up an event because we're trying to do something for ourselves. It's like we're not going to take other people's time away from them because it's just our.
I love that idea because I think very often the knights do not have enough time together, especially and there's always cliques, and
Yes.
the cliques don't know each other, and what you don't know sometimes becomes the enemy, and for no reason, right?
Right, and on the second part of it, how often do we get a chance? I mean, end of day, that's our chance. And it's not everybody's chance because some people have responsibilities, but end of day, fighting's done. Now you're going to stay out there and do all the pickups with your buddies you can, right? But even there, you tend to have a line of unbelts that still want to get some pickup. So you'll get those opportunities as much. And this was a place there's like, hey, I haven't fought that guy in a while. I want to go do some pickup.
Right.
And so we're helping each other become better fighters as well, right? Because in the end, we got there pretty much because we love doing that.
Right.
I mean, that's the fundamental.
Right. So we've totally skipped like you getting squired and everything. You said there was a story with your squiring. So why don't you tell us that?
So I'm jealous and of a lot. The good part is I've been able to give a lot of other people a squiring and a vigil and a ceremony that that have kind of fit what they need. Morgan, who was my knight, he was also leader of the household that was local Dark York, and so he passed away, I think 23 years ago now. So I had a number of others. So he was around for my knighting and two other of his squires' knightings. In fact, that's pretty much where all my regalia went as well. And then he had probably another 4, 5, 6 other squires, and so we took them on as kind of our dependents. And so I've been lucky, like Valharic, even Ronvalder and a lot of Sir Ragnar and just a ton of these other guys. There's only a couple of people that haven't got knighted. Wonderful people. We all, every time somebody got knighted, we're like, okay, next guy. We gotta give him, if he wants time, we'll give him time. If he doesn't, that's fine. But we try to make it special for each one of them, and we do that even for other people's squires now, and especially in the lineage. So
cool. So
my knighting, though, unfortunately, it was probably Pennsic 23 was when I reigned. I was prince at Pennsic 23, and so the hard part where it was, like I was saying before, we didn't have this camaraderie that between the knights we had before. So there was a lot of just ups and downs. I had known pretty much, I was like, to me, it didn't matter. I was going to go in on tournament, you know? And in fact, that's when Forgan asked me, I actually said, squires weren't, at least around here, looked at very well. Because we saw other knights that had 20, 30 squires, and we're like, really? You know? So the red belt was, at least to us, was like, don't need that. And then when Forgan became a knight, he asked about 4 of us, and we all turned him down. 3 of us finally came back, we talked, and we're like, this is unfair to him, right? So we wore a really dark red belt, so it's hard to tell. But so when my knighting came, at the time, some relations between king and prince were rough, and you know, and I was very close to Dog. In fact, I thank Dog I can't thank Dog enough for making me a better king than I would have ever been. But the previous king wanted to knight me more, and there's some stuff there, and it just didn't turn out great for through the process. But and that's why I try to make sure that the guys around here don't have to go through stuff.
Okay.
Guys and girls, because I was lucky enough to also be there for Jocelyn when she got knighted. So.
Okay, so you said that you won crown shortly after you got knighted. You've only reigned twice, though, right?
Yeah. In fact, I took a long break. I had an incredible time as king and prince. We do 6 months as prince, 6 months as king. A lot of work. But for me and my wife, we were already traveling 40 plus events a year anyways. You know, people at the time were like, oh, it costs so much. And for us, you know, we didn't have to, we stayed at people's houses. I think our stipend was like $800 at the time, but we always stayed at people's houses. We win stuff. And I mean, we had money at the end of our reign. We had some auctions, people would run and give, you know, try to help you with travel fund and stuff. But at the end, we gave money away to Osis and to Tarquin, who won as well. And, you know, it worked out. It was like, it's so cheap. I get free dinner, I get free events, I get to stay at people's houses because they want me to, you know, and it's all of a sudden, it's like, wow, it's a lot cheaper. You know, I gas paid for, woo, you know, and the people were amazing. You know, we got a great kingdom in that, and I'm sure everybody does. Much easier time, no email, by the way. Yeah, so that was nice. Yeah, we had to agree alto, so you know that was good. And but the thing I am very close to our local people, and I that's where my heart is. And when you're serving everyone, you lose a lot of time with your local folks. And I really miss that. And so I was like, nope, I'm done. And to tell you the truth, I really like being an earl. It's a great title, right? So I was like, that's as good. And you know what's even better is dukes hate being killed by earls. In fact, I had a number of people from a couple of different kingdoms that would like every time, and I'm a little dense, maybe hit by swords too many times. Took me a long time to figure out why they were doing it, but it's like they'd call me your grace all the time. I'm like, no, I'm not your grace. And I'd correct them, and it never got it until the end. They're like, finally I won the next round. They're like, finally, we can actually say it, and you won't correct us. And they were just doing it, right? Because it was like, why aren't you?
Right.
You know, early off, my goal wasn't necessarily to be a knight. My goal was to be a great fighter that could walk into a crown and win. To win for 20 years. I was like, most people come and go. Most people can't keep 20 years of being great. Right. Most people can't keep 20 years of being consistent. And I was like, that's what I want to be. And I don't need to fight the crowns to do that. you know, and it just, you know, I did fight in one in between, so between the 10 years, it was 10 years later I won. I did fight in 1 round, went to the finals with, I think, Finn at the time, good Finn. Hart wasn't totally into it. And then my wife never really liked the county title. And I felt bad because I was like, no, 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 no. And unfortunately, she got breast cancer about 10 years later. And I was like, this is the easiest thing I can do for her, you know? And I was like, okay, I'm going to go fight and to get her duchy and be done. In fact, I was thinking about after doing it, I'm like, can I just win and then resign and be your champion? I thought that would be cool. And then I was like, I'm not sure how many people would understand that.
Yeah.
So,
have you always been a good tournament fighter?
I mean, that's a hard one. So in the beginning, obviously, first 2-3
Right.
years.
Well, right.
Right?
But I mean, have you ever mentally struggled with the tournament? I guess is what I'm asking.
So there's a mental struggle with me all the time.
Okay.
The tournament is just the tournament, right? I'm lucky enough. I listen to people all the time, and it's cool. Everybody has their own mechanisms to cope with stuff, and some people, everything has to be set up a certain way, you know, that way they don't have to think about, you know, the Ron Calder does this bowing thing that kind of puts them in that tournament, you know, face, right? For me, you're on my field. That's up. I step out there. Now, there's not many tournaments, and Ron Calder I talk about, there's not many tournaments walk away from it and like, man, I suck, right? Half of that crap I did out there was trash. The footwork was terrible. I got hit once, you know, and the hard part there is you're saying that, and, you know, after a while I had to look at him and I'm like, we probably should watch what we're, you know, it's like we're winning Candlemass and we're saying we suck, you know, and you look and it's like, well, that's probably not very good for others to hear.
Right. Because people are like, oh, if they think they suck and they, you know, they beat everybody here and I didn't even make the 4th round or whatever, what do they think of me? And if people have to understand that you're applying your own filter to you, that you're not applying to other people, because you have certain expectations for yourself and you're at a different stage in your fighting.
100%. I mean, I always, for me and Ron Calder, it's like, even now, you know, it's like, we're always like, I feel like a beginner, you know, and, you know, we watch new people come in and grab onto footwork that we're just starting to do, and that's just what they do. And me and him are like having to think about it. It's like, I probably should move again, you know, and it drives us crazy, but that's okay. You know, so you know, but it's that same place, you know, somebody says something about, you know, oh, it must be easy or whatever. And I'm like, come with me. And I walk over and Ron Calder happened to be king, and we're at another tournament. And I was like, Your Majesty, you won Candlemass, right? And he's like, yeah. I go, how many times did you get hit? He's like, 4. I go, you remember who they were? He's like, oh yeah, I remember who they were. And I can tell you exactly where they hit me each time and why. Right? And that's that mentality.
Right. And I think, you know, some people don't understand. Oh, is it your birthday today?
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Somebody just reminded me. I'm sorry. Happy birthday.
Oh, no, it's all good. All good.
Okay, so I lost my train of thought for a second, but so you can do that, like, you know, Helga calls it like ruthless self-assessment, right? And like, so everybody has that on a different level. And I think that even you, like, you can say I suck today, but you can still see the good you are, and you know what I mean? Like, it's ruthless self-assessment, but you're still honest about where you are, right?
Yeah, you know,
it's not self-deprecation.
No, I don't, you know, sit back and constantly tear myself down. Am I happy where I am? No, you know, because there's always more. Hopefully one day I'll be a good fighter again. And but you know what, hopefully I will just keep learning. And that's all I care. It may not even lead me to be a better fighter, especially with other issues getting older, right? But if it makes me a better martial artist, I will be happy.
Well, you've said a couple times, I think in the coach's corner, that you're in better shape now than you've ever been in your life.
Yeah, actually I have. I've worked harder, and I keep saying that for the last number of years. I'm like, Jesus, I didn't know if I started, sometimes at practices, and I don't blame my guys. There's like, there comes a practice and me and Rongo will be standing around waiting for somebody, sword, the helmet on, and they don't have the day they want to just go out and get taught or get beat up or whatever, and it's good. So for a while I was like, okay, I'm just gonna run sprints, in between, and but just in the last year, it's I working out a ton more, dropped 55 pounds, went down to about 13% body fat, start watching all my calorie intake, all my vitamin intake. So there's a ton of stuff, just to try to keep what I have, make myself feel better as well, and then be able to use that to try to push what my fundamental education and understanding of martial arts is and the ability within it.
One of the things that I find really impressive about you is that I think you've only reigned twice, but I mean, you could pretty much reign whenever you want, but you don't need that to feed your ego or whatever, or whatever. And maybe you don't enjoy reigning like some people do, like they really, really love the theater of it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, people are great about that.
Yeah, but not only, have you kept your prowess level up and you don't need to be this uber dude, but you've invested so much time and energy into your local group and keeping your practices going over. And I mean, I think when you came out here, I think it was like 11 years ago now, you said something about how you guys would always post like who was going to be at practice and who was at practice, and you get people to go. And you guys, like, I would look at the Legio Draconis thing, and you and Ragnvalder were like at 2 practices a week, every week for years, like years. So the amount of dedication that you have, I guess one of the things I look at all that, and it's very impressive. And I just wonder, how do you keep yourself motivated and dedicated when you don't have like this big goal? Or, I mean, I know you love it, but you can love something and not want to practice twice a week.
Oh, I don't want to practice anytime. It's much easier to sit in a chair, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's all he does is eat, swim, sleep, fighting. And it's like, no, it's not. And this is for both me and Ronball. They were just like, we went to practices as long as we could make it back in town. We were doing 2 practices a week, even when we were on the throne, right? And you get to a point where you do something so consistently that you're afraid to stop, right? Because if you stop once, it's easy to stop twice. Right? You stop twice, it's easy to stop more. And then you fill that time in with something else.
Right. And the inertia takes over, right? So
that's correct.
I have this saying, like, the best way to get motivated is to actually do the thing. Because when you do the thing, it's easier to stay motivated because you're making habits, and it just becomes part of your life, right? But is there, I mean, obviously you have Candlemas, like that people call it like the Brannos Invitational or whatever. So that's like probably, is that something like every year you sort of go for to win? Or, I mean,
I go to fight there. For me and Ron Balder, it's not necessarily not driving to win, right? We're driving to perform.
Okay.
Right? I might go to an event, and even good events, and I'd be like, man, there's some great pickup out here. I am just going to go do pickup all day. That's what we're driving for, right? If we win, that's great. I'm very happy about that. Candlemas is one of those. It's like there's not much pickup after, so it's like if I get into the top rounds, I'm going to make sure I'm fighting people that are lots of times kings or dukes or whatever from other kingdoms, right? So that's where those fights are. But my goal in those is to apply what I have constantly been working on, right? And it doesn't matter where I go. I'm going to apply what I constantly have been working on and try not to mentally break down.
Right. So, Sean always talks about like victory conditions. So your victory conditions performing?
Yes.
Whatever. Okay.
I mean, I spent 30 years twice a week, 30 plus years twice a week at practice. And then, I mean, to give you how that feels, Ronwalder, when COVID started, I was lucky enough to have my Spire and Sir Louis, or partner, that live a block away from me. And I was working out a lot at a gym. That gym was going to be shut down, and they had weights, and we happened to be going to golf wars, and they got canceled. So we went on another vacation. We're like, let's go up north to a cabin and do our thing. And since we were on a vacation anyways, and then on the way home, we're like, you guys want to do the family bubble thing? You know, at the time it wasn't bubble because nobody talked that way, but we're like, why not, right?
Great.
And then all of a sudden, you know, at first we probably got a little bit of that. You guys aren't supposed to be together. And it's like, well, I got bad news. We're adults. We trust each other. We're all working from home, right?
Right.
They, you know, by doing this, I was probably safer than I have ever thought I probably would have been, because you know, one person would go, a couple people would go get groceries and do that, and then everybody get back and they clean all the groceries and, you know, all the stuff you're supposed to be doing. And, you know, but it gave me a place to go work out 4 days a week, right? And it gave us a place to go on the weekend and catch you know, watch a movie, you know, on Friday night, Saturday night, and have dinner together. And, you know, I look and I'm like, I'm not even sure how I go back to the SCA when everything's unblocked, because that's what we've been doing. Everything's filled up. We now have these cool people online, you know, doing these interviews or doing SCA's Coaches Corner or all of that kind of stuff. I mean, there's so much good content.
Right.
You know,
it doesn't replace being, you know, in person and getting to fight a whole smorgasbord of people, right?
Right. And yeah, that's where it's going to be wonderful. But, you know, this break has also given us the time to take a hard look at what we do as well, at least for me, because, you know, for Cy and Louis, they get one-on-one with me all the time. They've actually, you know, because of that, I've pushed my level of understanding and how I train to another level. And I've been training, you know, I got a Pelican here mostly for training, right? And that's the one thing I mean, for me, I love helping people become the best they can be, right? It doesn't mean they have to be knighted. It doesn't mean they have to be king or whatever, but becoming the best and working hard at becoming better. And just, you know, just going out and winning a couple fights and seeing that on somebody's face is a gift. Right. And so, and this is one of those other reasons why, you know, on a kingdom level, you're spreading all that out. But, you know, that coaching piece and stuff, that individual piece is really hard to do, because if I spend too much time with one person, I'm ignoring other people. But when I'm not in that position, I can spend that time, you know, and have for 30 years. I've had people come in from Eldemere and from Aidenville, or not, from Ethelmark, and from the East, and, you know, from North Shield and Meridia's a lot, you know. So, you know, we've been lucky with that.
Well, I don't know if it's luck.
That's the fun part for me. What?
I was gonna say, I don't think it's luck. I think you have created something, right? And it's a commodity is the wrong word, but you've created something that people want to be part of because it works.
Yeah, and like, you know, we talked about, like, you know, it's a constant struggle, because, you know, there are times I look and I'm like, why am I doing this? You know, that everybody's going to get grief from time to time. I mean, no matter what you do, you're wrong for somebody, right? And there are times there's like, why am I doing this when nobody appreciates it? And then there are times I have to look and I'm like, well, am I doing it really for everyone else? Like we feel like we're doing sometimes, or am I really doing that for me? To have great fighters around me, to have a great practice I can go to twice a week.
Right.
Right. So stop being a crybaby. This is for you. It's not for them.
Right.
You know, and just keep going.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. You do things and you invest all this time and energy, and people still think you should have done it a different way, and it can be very disheartening to invest so much of yourself in something and still have people pick it apart.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of this, we were sort of talking about some of the new and different things you've been doing to train recently. Are there things that you've implemented through COVID that you hadn't used before that you could share with some of us?
Yeah, and I probably shared it a lot on the Coach's Corner already, but my side was Squire pretty ADD. So you know, it's hard. For most of my career, it's like, you listen to me, I'll guide you that way. If you don't care, you know, if you get to that place where you're just not listening, that's fine. Then I'm going to move on, right? For her, it's not that she's not listening. It's hard to put those things together sometimes, right? And I didn't, and that's a standard, you know, that's a real thing. And she educated me on what it is to have that type of thing. And so with her, it became much easier to layer things. And Louis is a little bit like that. He's very scientific in his mind and engineer wise. So by breaking something down and helping understand it, it's easier to move to the next thing. Now, in fighting normal practices, we just go and fight, and you learn from what you did against that guy a couple minutes ago, and maybe you're going to try it on a different guy. Maybe it just never gets a chance to until next time. It's a hard way to learn.
Right.
You have to figure all that out by yourself. That's difficult, right? So really, they helped me understand the idea of layering. So there would be like, okay, we're going to throw these blows on this pedal, right? They're going to teach you how to shift in your feet. You know, it went everything from, I do a lot of like what, you know, most of my movements all around my hips, right? It's like my hips move my whole body and flow, keeping stacked the whole time, back nice and straight, right? That's stacked. And, you know, we were like, how can you lean so far? And then I realized it's like, okay, you're not leaning as far as me. Why is that? And it's like, okay, you got on the ball of your foot, but now I want you to engage your toes for stabilization. And you can literally feel your stabilization on the front of your toes if you lean as far forward as possible and try to hold yourself. And you know, I mean, who talks about that?
Nobody.
Right? and it's amazing because we do that all the time. We just don't talk about it.
Right.
And so then we go through shots, and then I go through that same shot while I'm walking at you. And then while I'm walking backwards. Right? And then we're going to go through that shot. I'm going to move on a 45, and you're going to move on that same 45 in front of me. We do pad drills with those now, where I have some pad drills online. We're just hitting the pads, and we'll do the same thing just with pads instead of armor. And we'll walk these lines. It's amazing how many people can't actually get the right, and everybody thinks they can. And I mean, where that, you know, that forward step, that timing between your forward step and your hip moving forward and your shot while you're walking is something we don't think about.
Right.
So if we're not practicing it, how good are we at it?
Right.
So we practice that all four ways, and then we move it into, I'm going to move whatever way I want, right? And you're going to follow me and trace me in that pattern and throw that blow through those pieces. So you see how it's layering now?
Yeah.
And so, and you know, so then we go through that, and then we add some fakes in there and more movement. Right now we're doing a lot of, I've been a Lomachenko fan for a long time. He's Eastern European boxer, incredible, just lost his title, so unfortunately. But he probably one of the most hardworking boxers ever, and everybody agrees. His movement is amazing. His second fight, won a title in the U.S. It might have been his third, I apologize. But he literally made 9 people quit. It's not knocking them out. This is, I have no clue where you are because you're behind me now. And then when I turn around, you're on the other side of me and still behind me. And I'm throwing blows at emptiness because his movement was so amazing. And so think about our standard movement in the SCA. First thing is we tend to, I'm going to set up right in front of you, set and throw. Now break that down into, I am going to take an instant. I'm going to shift. As you turn, I'm going to, and prepare to set, I'm going to throw and shift. Throw and shift is this constant. You get offline constantly. Because if I'm offline and you're just turning your upper body, thank you very much. Because you're throwing different every time you just turn your upper body.
Right.
So all of that builds into breaking somebody else's fight down. So right now we're working on circular methods around people. So we have one of the bobtails. In fact, we have probably 6 of them. And what we have these, you know, and I'm waiting to see tons of people tell me we're all doing it wrong. But we do a lot of cross footwork action. In other words, we'll do single foot crosses and stuff like that that allows you, your foot, the way you turn it right now, if I pass somebody, I'm gonna throw a blow and go past them. It's a straight line, really. We're just, here we go. And then we're disengaged. We don't do this.
Right.
Because your foot has to change its angle as you step. That foot has to turn in so that your body and hips can stay with that person. But we don't, again, how often do we do this?
Right.
So we're doing a lot of that. You know, it's the same thing. We took that six shot pelt drill and we layered that in now. So now it's like, you're gonna do this cross step and you're gonna do this cross step, you're gonna do this cross step, and you're gonna change the angles, those 6 same shots, but with movement inside of it.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone earlier today about how, you know, people always talk about how pole work is boring, and I think it's boring when you're not creative with it.
Yeah.
And when you layer things into it like that, it's not boring because you have to be mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing it, and the why, right? The key to layering is really the why and how things fit together. So if people are interested in what you're doing, do they go over to the coaches corner? Is your stuff up there?
So I've been sharing it a lot. We have been we cut a lot of video early off. Just actually cut a video the other night. People are asking, and we do a lot of foam work, right? It's like, we do foam because it's not about, we think about the sword too much. We don't think about other stuff. And I see a lot of people is like, as soon as they get rattan in their head, and they forget everything else. So, and really what we're doing, you know, you look at the Europeans and the ACL guys, all those guys are mostly using foam at practice and then steel at events. The foam layers in, I've been using it for years because it helps to reduce stress on my shoulders, helps reduce, you know, it helps reduce concussion, all of those things. Plus it allows you to work on the things you want to work on. It also takes that fear out of it, right? I'm going to practice my ass wrap on you with a piece of rattan. Is that going to be a fun day? Not really, right? Now, go ahead and do it with a piece of foam. It's like, okay, no big deal.
Yeah, and I use foam all the time for my pole work because it reduces repetitive stress injury. Yeah. And really, if you're doing your hand mechanics and your body mechanics right, it doesn't matter that it's not the right weight, because that's not really the point. The point is about the mechanics, and so whatever you pick up is going to work.
And usually what we'll do is we'll do about 80% foam, and then your last set will be with rattan, so you can make sure that you get the right technique with that weight. Very cool.
That's very cool.
So I didn't answer your question. I have a bunch of video we cut. I have shared some of it on SCA Coaches Corner and some links under some of our episodes. But also, if people do want to reach out to me, please. I train a lot of people. Like, I'm probably reviewing in the range. For a while there, I was reviewing like 4, 5, 6 fight videos a week for people to practice and things. But I have right now it's a Google file share, and I just let people, I post stuff up in a couple different groups, or, you know, kind of categories, and I put it out there if they want to take a look at it. If there's specific questions, then sometimes Lou and Sad are nice enough to like help me, and we'll film. Okay, here's how you're having trouble with this. Try this. This is actually how I was lucky enough. Or Wolfric from Drachenball. So he got knighted a couple years ago now, and that was just me and him. He's my dependent, and he would send me video constantly, and we'd review and step by step, second by second on the YouTube. I'd be like, okay, at this point you did this. You can't do that. At this point you did this. This point you did this. Oh, you're having trouble with this? Here's how I do it. And then he'd shoot video, and it was just back and forth. for a couple of years. And lucky enough, he was already good, but he really picked it up and ran with it. So.
And training people feeds your soul, right? I mean,
oh, that's my joy in my life, right? Helping others, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I also, one big piece, and I tell people all the time, the piece I really love about the SCA is the ability to go and help somebody have a better day. Okay. I tell people all the time, you want to be, they'll be like, yeah, I want to be a Pelican. It's like, that's great. How about, what the biggest service you can do to somebody is make somebody smile. Even if it's for a second, right? You made their life better a little bit, yeah. Right? And, it's funny, and it's not just at SCA events. I mean, we know that already. We help everybody. I mean, we're, it's kind of that family deal. It's like family outside, right? It's like family by choice, right? That's a common thing that runs. It's, it's a gift to be able to help others. It doesn't matter if you're in garb or not in garb. In this case, I have to wear a costume to go help others. That's kind of how I feel, right?
Right. And I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, well, it's Brannos. I'm not good enough for him to work with me. I'm going to waste his time. And that's not true, right?
No. I am, the one piece I will say that I do is you need to be dedicated. And this isn't, I've had people like, first thing I ask is, I'd like you to go shoot some Pel video. And then if you have any fights that are taped, I'd like a couple of fights, and sometimes it's like, okay, it's more of, hey, watch me. And I'm like, okay, this really isn't about learning. This is about me watching them. And then other people are like, okay, here's my Pel video and here's a couple of fights, the ones they don't win. And, and then we can start.
Right.
And some of that start is, I have some people, in fact, a lot of people, the first thing they do is body weight squats. Right. In fact, even today at our practice, we're really a bigger man. So it's hard for him, especially has a little bit of some ankle issues. But, wears large boots too is another piece. But he tended to stay on his heels. So it's like when you drop for a leg shot, first, not everybody drops for a leg shot, but when you drop, I almost sit and I'll throw a leg shot right above your knee from that height. Right. But if you're dropping and you're dropping your shoulders because your heels are on the ground and you're trying to stay balanced, you're leaning. Where's your shot going? Down.
Right.
Right. So I have people like on your toes, body weight squat all the way down, all the way up, and then get all the way up on your toes, and then back down, all the way down. And the idea is to keep your body straight from top to bottom. And that big extension on your toes at the end builds that, balance on your foot, right? That feel, because that's important. And it also helps your calves to finish out the exercise.
Right. Very cool. So have we not talked about anything that you would like to talk about? Because I have you now for a little bit over an hour, so I feel like we should transition.
No problem. I kind of told you, right? What this was going to talk was all going to be about, right?
Right.
This is my life, so
who doesn't love to talk fighting?
Oh, me, I'd rather talk anything else. Whatever. My wife knows. She's had to live with 3 fighters all the way through COVID. I feel so bad for her.
She probably has a great eye, by now, she's probably a really good analytical.
Oh yeah, she has a great mind. You'll watch people, it's like, you're not really doing it the way they tell you.
Yeah. All right, well then why don't we go ahead and look at your sword.
All right, so hey, here's I'm going to show you one first. I just made this one. This is the one I did in the video this week that I'm actually going to be posting. So I just finished up the video and is uploading it. People were asking how to make a foam sword. I have a lot of people out of foam groups in a local group, so I've been using them as an example. So we use the foam, same types of foam they use, so it adds for durability. I use these against armored opponents. I fight a lot of people with, I'll fight this and they'll fight rattan. I don't care. What does it matter, right?
Right.
And what the good part is, it's also legal. As long as it's built correctly, it's legal to use in our youth organization. So the way we use youth, and the reason why I did that was because we had some very good young fighters here who we train like adults. But they carry 2 swords with them, and they'll walk out to the field at when you're working. I'm youth marshal and background inspector, all that kind of stuff, and they can just go to a practice and be just like an adult.
Yeah, we do that too.
Right? And it makes it so much nicer because they don't feel like they're on the outside. We still have a youth practice where they're like, okay, I can just go hang out with the youth and have fun. But they'll come and train and do stuff with us. So so we use that. Durability is much better. So here's my sword, and I'm going to apologize. I do not know who makes these baskets. I'll have to get with Valharic and find out after these keynotes. The gentleman was out of Erie, Pennsylvania. He was a knight as well. I believe he's passed away. But Valharic uses one just like this. The shape is very nice because it leaves room on the bottom with the flap here for your hand to move inside the basket still. Where sometimes when you come into a point, your hand's kind of leveraged in there and you can't turn it anymore. This is one of those pieces that we've kind of learned a little bit more about even through COVID. The attachment points is the thing I love the most. This is another man who shares my birthday today, John or Lebref. Works for electrical industry. So these are shrink wrap. These come probably this big. When I first start these are this big, and then they shrink wrap them down. They put them on high voltage wires. You put one of those on, there's like a little bit of glue part of the thing, but you put one on and you pretty much have to cut it off to get it back off your sword. There is no way that comes off. So they got one on the front, one on the back, and sword's about 34 inches long. I don't necessarily measure it. It's like, grab me my old one, or I'll look at it and go, you sure that's not an inch too long, type of deal. But that's usually, most of ours are in that range of length with the thrusting tip.
And do you have grip tape on your grip? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I use grip tape on the grip. One thing happens with the rattan, and tape will do this after a period of time too, is you'll create a little bit of slickness, right? Especially as it dries. So you'll create that slickness, and that hand will turn a little bit, which also takes your basket and orients your basket differently when you're throwing. So it becomes difficult, especially when you're using loose grip, right?
Right.
So I'm pretty much loose grip thrower. Most of that actually came out of Meridia's. I'm gonna thank all their Meridian folks, especially Duke Gareth, who really showed me not only how to hit arms, but I figured out how he could hit anybody at will, being a giant guy. And it's like, my block was there, how do you hit? And he does these breaks, right? So he'll throw here and then he'll turn that sword and break. So I throw a lot of breaks. There are times I'll literally throw and cast and let the sword go. It better hit something because it's the only way it comes back to my hand, right? But
do you have a trigger in there or no trigger?
Yes, I have a trigger. It's my Marshall. Oh, wait a second. No, I don't have a trigger anymore. It's my Marshall appeasement device. I don't. So when you first start doing it, a trigger is useful, but be careful. Watch, tight triggers can actually. What we learned, Side had some issues with her fingers, and she couldn't figure out what was going on. Thought maybe mouse. She's an engineer, so works a lot with that. It ended up being the trigger on the sword. As you cast and release, that trigger's pulling. Yeah. So it started causing some issues with her hand. So be careful, folks out there, the way you're doing that could, if you feel like you're having issues with your fingers are sore and stuff, could literally be your trigger.
Interesting. That's interesting. Was it because her trigger was too tight?
So it was her trigger was tighter, and so it was just grabbing on all the time. So any type of pressure, releasing pressure would pull, and that's fine. But if over time, any type of pulling pressure like that will develop some issues, right?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's do the final 10 then.
All right.
I'm sure you have
this
great
is what I was so afraid of.
All right. What event would you like to go to that you have never been to before?
That was there's actually Great West War is one that I'm gonna get to one of these times because I just got too many friends out there now. one I've been invited to for a long time. It's just hard because of the time at Penzic, and my camp at Penzic is like 100 and used to be 140 people. So, we do a lot of work. Believe me, I'm happy when Penzic is done. That's when my vacation starts. But is the Sport of Kings.
It's hard because it's right after Penzic.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a contractor, so I don't get paid for time off. So that makes it even more difficult.
Okay. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
So that was always an interesting one. I like fighting everyone. So, but there are a couple people I've never got to do. One is Duke Inman. Dog was lucky enough to get passes with him. Moses was lucky enough to get passes with him. But by the time stuff, kind of got me moving and going to other places, it just weren't in the same circles and just never happened. So that was the one I wish I had a chance in my prime to do. And the other one's Jade. I would have loved to get some time with Jade.
You never fought with Jade at all?
I may have way back in the day, but I want to remember. That's I want to like you, me, let's go. Right? The other guy, I tell you, the other guy, I and I'm not sure I want to fight him anymore because I got a chance to fight him. Amazing is Mark. His footwork. I mean, I worked a lot of foot stuff, right? I fought him with his great sword, and amazing stuff. Amazing.
Yeah, he is. His understanding of what he's doing and his ability to communicate it is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I appreciate that layer of what he is doing because that's the same kind of thing that he's pushing people to understand that matter. It's the same thing in my head, and so it was a great fight. I had a wonderful fight. I remember the whole thing, and I got a couple of lucky blows in. He got good blows in, and that weren't lucky because he set him up there. But I would love, he's one of those guys that it's amazing fight. Anybody gets a chance to time with him.
Yeah. I concur. He's amazing. What is your favorite medieval-esque or period film?
Yeah, this is always a good one. I really watched. There's one film I watched a ton of times when I first kind of was getting into the SCA, and that was Knight Rider. And it wasn't for the content, right? I mean, the content's pretty rough. Ed Harris, man, he was kind of a second-tier actor for a long time. A great, like, Academy Award-winning second-tier actor. But the one thing he has is his focus and like all in this to the edge of craziness, right? Is that place where I knew that place. So it was like you catch him like he's just at the edge of being over the edge, and that's I get there. I totally understand where that is, right? So I really related with that, and I just always love intense people like that.
Cool, that's cool. What is your favorite Penzic story?
It's funny because we were kind of running through these top 10, and I gave a crappy answer, but I'm going to give that crappy answer again. I'm lucky enough to have a camp that's usually over 100 people. And I'm lucky enough to have a fighting unit that's usually between, 80, 90 people at Penzic. And every year is probably, I love the stories, and this I guess goes back to because everybody else loves them. Every year, the stories that come from each person are incredible, right? Nailing one down, I mean, it's really rough because even the one, I'll give you one for sure, and some people will remember it, but there's Rocco in the red dress, right? One of our guys came back to our camp wearing his tunic. Well, it wasn't his tunic, it was her coat hardy. So, and I happened to be up at 4 a.m. with a couple other guys when he tried to sneak in camp wearing her dress.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the story of don't leave a tent to go to the bathroom if you don't know where that tent is.
Yes, that's hilarious. All right. Who do you like to watch fight?
Oh man, there's so many people. I mean, I could just, I love watching Sean and Luther and Alaric and all of these guys, George, there's so many good people to watch, right? And for me, that's like my career. The one thing I'm lucky to be able to do is figure out what somebody's doing and then try to figure out how to do it, right? And that's where the coaching piece from inside me and I really push, like Coach's Corner was, like, how are we going to do this teacher thing, and I'm like, let's do teacher and coach, because I've been trying to get people to understand the difference between a coach and a teacher, because there is a difference. Some cross, but that coach is there that sometimes say, what the hell are you doing? If you're going to do that, why don't you go out to the parking lot and take a seat for a while, right? As a teacher, you don't want to do that, right? You have to know somebody deep enough to find what their triggers are to push them to the next place. And that's what a coach does. So, that ability to watch people and see what they're doing has been part of me, and that's why coaching is the big piece for me. But you look at people like Uther, who can turn an incredibly strong blow with a half a shot, right? Just amazing stuff. Mark, who's manipulating people with footwork, that's amazing, right? But I can just go through each person, and I appreciate all these people for the things that I can see them doing.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Very cool. Do you have a hero in the SCA, and if so, who is it?
Whew. Why don't I remember talking about this one? Probably my wife. How's that one?
I think your wife is perfect.
I tell you, she came in kicking and screaming, and really not kicking and screaming. She came in as like, oh, what am I getting into? She didn't sew. She didn't, really do medieval stuff. No interest at all. And probably for 15 years, she's the one that kept me in the society, because she's never going to leave. And
I was going to ask, when you guys went to that first D&D thing, like at the comic store, like what was there for her to do? Like what kept her engaged? Nothing?
Nothing. Right?
It is hard, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And she was a Pelican before I was, and I always tease her. She always got more awards than me, and and the best part is she's that person that not only allows me to do stuff for others, but is the person leading that space, And when I'm down and I'm just, I'm down, I don't want to go to an SCA event. I'm still going to go to fight practice, but I don't want to go to an SCA event. But she'll give me that look. It's like, okay, well, I'm leaving, so bye. And it's like, okay, it's like, put your big knickers on and get in the car with her.
What's one event in the mid realm that you would recommend somebody go to?
Of course, everyone's going to say, for me, of course, they're going to say Candlemass, right? And then Candlemass is great. Doug even said it. It's much, if you're looking at a fighting event, that's the one you want to go to. 100%. If you get to, I think Louis actually posted a bunch of pictures when we went there again last year. And I went there years before. I took a break for a while, but that was Winter Revel in that 17th century hunting lodge in a park on the west side of Michigan.
I saw those pictures. They're fantastic.
Oh, it's a giant sledding hill there. When I was on Unbelt, we used to go out there, you grab your war board and you like slide down the sledding hill and break your back. And it was like they had so much fun activity. And then at night, you stayed up as late as possible drinking, or slept on the picnic table, and there's lofts above where people sleep at night.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah, it's totally amazing.
Amazing sight. The ambiance in that hall is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and that was great. But there are so many. I mean, so many good ones to choose from. Our TOCs. I was gonna say, one of those, and you already beat me to the subject, and that is the Shiv Retreat. I mean, it's a really great time. We have visitors in all the time. And it's fun because we really get the chance to sit down with somebody and know them better.
I would love to come. So I I said I wasn't angling for an invitation, but I would love an invitation.
Well, there should be one hopefully coming up actually once all this is done. So
Cool. Very cool. What book should someone on the path to knighthood read?
I don't know. Somebody should tell me. I'm not much of a book reader.
Okay, that's fair.
And to tell you the truth, I mean, unless you're talking like martial arts books.
It can be a martial arts book. That's
yeah, and I read a lot of the Tao and stuff like that. Actually, they're not so much books. They're more pamphlets, and I'm going to bring these up mostly because I make all my folks read them.
Are these the Vitus pamphlets?
These are the Vitus ones, right? Okay. This is the Anvil of Virtue and Chains of Faith. And
yeah, put them up because I think some people don't know what they are.
All right, so that's the Anvil of Virtue. Chains of Faith is a little deeper. Yep, okay. But Chains of Faith actually made me at one point apologize to the crown for being a, excuse my language, piss poor duke. I didn't dress well. I didn't dress my station and all of those pieces. And this was the book that reminded me of that. But these books are like the art of war, right? Every time you read them, you can interpret them different based on where you are now. And that's what makes them so important. And these were specifically written for the SCA, pretty much. And that's what also makes them important.
And are those available online or?
So these are actually, I believe, Vitus, his Facebook account actually has these in a document form.
Okay.
So he did release those in document form. I'm hoping one day maybe he goes ahead and just go ahead and create pamphlets and gives them maybe to like Master Eric or something to sell with all his armor stuff or something. But he, we were all lucky enough in that period of time to have Vitus kind of put everybody in check a little here and there because it didn't matter who you were. He was willing to do that.
If you could change one thing about the SCA, what would it be?
Oof, man, this is the one I was really having a rough time with. There's tons of stuff that that people think needs to be changed, and there's probably stuff that needs to be changed. I tell you the one thing I would love to see, and it's not so much about the SCA, but maybe our membership, and that is that we all understood each other better, and we're willing to talk, right? Don't have to agree. I'm just saying willing to talk. And actually, we're a pretty lucky society that we do that pretty well. Maybe not right now because we're not face to face. But when we're face to face, our fundamental is don't be a dick.
Right.
Right. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Some people understand how to be in check, some people don't. So, I'm not going to stand and say, hey, I don't want knee work, or, why do we go down to our knees? Why do we do this? This is our sport, right? I mean, judo has their own gig and all the steel work has their own, Emma has their own, everybody has their own to make it a sport, right? So it is what it is, and it's going to change, right? With time, everything changes. So, the piece is we have to let it change. And a little bit of that goes back to that if maybe this is the thing I should have said, and that is allow some change to happen, right? There's so many, and this includes me, we're a growing older society where we have members that have been in 50, 60 years or whatever. Change is hard when you get older, but we have to let the newer, younger people, like when we came in, have some change that fits for them. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult. Otherwise, they make their own groups. They move on, So I guess maybe not only be better to each other, but allow people to make change.
Yeah, be a little bit more flexible.
Yeah, believe me, I started shooting pictures out of my fight practice because I had two really young people that are like, hey, let's do a selfie. I'm like, whoa, what is this selfie thing, right? And they did a selfie and they posted it up and everybody was like, oh, that's great. Look at you. And the next thing you know, I've been taking pictures for like 2-3 years at Fight Pride. We like weird, crazy stuff, all of us forming a Viking boat or, standing on our heads or doing all this other crazy stuff, and everybody loves them. They make calendars out of them because it's fun.
Right, it's fun, and then people see it and they're like, oh, they're having fun at fight practice, I need to go. Like, look at all the people that are there.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then it's fun for you to look back on later.
Oh, it sure is.
Yeah. Okay, the last question. What do you think is the most important trait for a fighter to be successful?
Dedication.
Dedication? Is that what you said?
Constant dedication. Go for the long run. And I went through periods of time where I feel like my prowess fell back before it moved forward, right? So you've got to be careful, like those plateaus. You got to be careful that you're not such a huge search to break out of this plateau that it leaves you there forever. Just go out and do the good things work for you, and perfect those things. Basics are always, the base of everything you're going to do in the future as well. So that dedication to just being there all the time, it pays off in time.
Well, yeah. I mean, look at what you've done with your area and your fight practice, and you and Ragnvalder. I mean, it really is impressive. I'm not trying to stroke your ego or anything. It's just one of the things I think is super impressive about what you've done there is your creation of community. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've been very lucky, and it's it's fun because I've been lucky to have people dedicated, very dedicated people that go all the time. I'm really lucky to have Ragnvalder here who has the same dedication level as I do, so that we're always here for each other. So that helps, is that building that community, it goes a long way.
Well, thank you very much, Your Grace, for your time. Thanks everyone for joining us. Tomorrow,
I'm happy. I finally was like, okay, I got to get off my butt and get back with you. So.
Well, I really appreciate it. I know sometimes it's a little out of your comfort zone, but I totally appreciate it. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk to Lucan, which should be another really
awesome
cool conversation. So 7
Exactly. Please say hi to me. And Lucan's kind of my other in the East. So
okay.
We've lots of heroics together and everything else. So incredible guy. We had him on one of our SCA Coach's Corner episodes. Does tons of stuff with Boffer right now. Lives the dream.
Yeah.
For real life, right?
Yeah, he has his own medieval dojo.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
So cool. So cool.
All right. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.